Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, I wanted to go over how long-term unemployment affects your mental health and well-being. This was requested. Just a disclaimer, I had a pretty busy week. It was a pretty rough week. It's productive, but it's been a lot. And so my mood is not the best right now. The first one is increased risk of both depression and anxiety. There was a large scale analysis that we looked at that consistently shows that unemployed individuals have significantly higher rates of depression and anxiety than those that are employed. And so there's two sides to this. People who are depressed and anxious struggle with employment a little bit more, but in general, as the unemployment length is increased, that increases. And people who are generally unemployed, from their perspective, long-term unemployment, they actually do see that there's increased markers of depression and anxiety. That research was 2022 and 2014. The next one is increased risk for SI. And that would be thinking about hurting or like thinking about yourself in that way, if that makes sense, ideation, and sometimes even a plan. The research was done in 2014. So basically a lot of folks, what starts happening is they ponder on the meaning for their life, if they matter. Unemployment feels like rejection, and that constant rejection can be very difficult. And particularly those who are more neurotic, which we've talked about on this channel before, people who are neurotic, they tend to take things a little bit more negatively, and they tend to mull over or ruminate those things continuously. So an example is someone who is neurotic. Let's say a girl makes a face at you, and maybe it has nothing to do with you. Maybe she's in a bad mood. Maybe she's had a rough day at work, and it just happens to be that you're in the angle of where she was looking. You're going to think that she was maybe making a look at you. And then what's going to happen is you're also going to replay that event or continuously think about it and that's your neurotic perspective or angle or personality. And you're going to have that impact your quality of life more frequently. You're going to be more uncomfortable with rejection. You're going to have more negative thoughts about women or people in general. In comparison to someone who's less neurotic, they're going to take that, maybe brush it off, maybe not even be affected by it or not care. And particularly with those who are more neurotic, they tend to be at a little bit more of a risk with this particular example regarding long-term unemployment, because the rejection is continuously. Obviously, the longer you are unemployed, you feel like you're being rejected by society or by other job prospects, etc., which is true to some extent, not fully. But what's happening is you're taking that incredibly personal, which unemployment is not necessarily always personal. It's a lot of other attributes. You take it very personal, and so then you question your reason for your own viability in life and general your goals, and that can really affect how you treat yourself. The next one is unemployment affects identity, social well-being, and quality of life more higher with neurotic individuals, people who struggle with mental health in general already. Recent research actually shows that unemployment impacts not just mental diagnostic impressions, but also broader well-being, including, which is still correlated to diagnostic impressions, quality of life, social isolation, and loss of personal identity. Especially if you are a person who is ambitious, you are losing the part of yourself that you believed was attached to how you can take care of other people in terms of maybe your family, maybe in terms of you being able to climb the career ladder. And so you lose a part of yourself. And in terms of social well-being, some people, they only socialize at work. And so this can be a huge impact. Or maybe you're ashamed to socialize with other people because people will ask you about your employment situation. Maybe you're afraid to date because you feel like that can create a barrier. And sometimes it can. I have some couples I work with where the male is unemployed, and it can sometimes impact, not all the time does it impact, but it can impact if the female she's also not making that much money. So like they are still making a good amount in total, but she feels a little uncomfortable with always like is if he was employed when they got together and then he got unemployed in the relationship, sometimes what can happen is she might feel a lot of pressure to fulfill all those needs, which it happens in relationships, but she might take it as he doesn't care for her, which isn't true at all. Or she might take it personal, which is her own issue that she might need to work on. But then some men are so afraid of being in that situation where he feels pressured not just by himself, but a potential female. And that can be really difficult because males in particular, they still feel like they need to be a provider, and women feel that way as well. And so you can see that dynamic in relationships, and some men are afraid to have that impact them. So sometimes they isolate just so they don't have to experience something like that. The next one is increased self-doubt. A lot of times you think it's your fault. You wonder, is there something wrong with you for the reason you're not employed? And that's not always the case. The next one is very obvious, but it's about well-being more than mental health. You have a financial strain. It's not the most it is the most immediate effect of all of these, but it depends on your financial portfolio and status. Like, I can't speak to that fully because there's so many variables to this particular point. Debt accumulation. If you have debt, you need to pay that. Difficulty paying for housing, healthcare, food, or other basic necessities. Reduce saving in retirement funds, maybe paying for your children, maybe child support, and for whatever reason, maybe the courts are not in your favor. I actually don't know much about that. I do know a little bit, but it really depends on the state and county and so many other things. But in general, it's very difficult and it can impact people in many different ways. And so I don't want to speak too much on that specifically, but you guys are welcome to shed light on it. It'll help me understand as well. The next one is a physical health decline. Research does show that stress and limited resource can contribute, and often does contribute, to poor sleep, unhealthy eating habits, reduce access to healthcare, and increase risk for other illnesses over time. The last one is social and relationship effects. That's what I was touching on a little bit earlier, but we can touch on a little bit more right now. Unemployment can actually strain relationships with family and friends. Sometimes it's because you're on the edge because of financial pressure. Sometimes you're asking to borrow money, and that can put a little bit of strain on either people. Sometimes, like we were mentioning, let's say you lose your job and your girlfriend or your wife is carrying the family financially, and that wasn't her original goal. And so maybe she's not making enough, or it's just barely. And so there's a lot of strain in that relationship. Sometimes what I see in relationships is sometimes wives, not all women are like this, by the way, they become like extra controlling about this. Like, she's now submitting resumes for him, and that makes him feel even worse. Not all men are like that, but some men, they're like, I don't want her to feel like she's my mom, right? She's like submitting resumes. She's like trying to get referrals for him. And it also makes him feel like he's not valuable without that, even though that's not always the case. It's just sometimes she feels like, I'm so worried. I want to help him. I want to fix this. And it creates a really bad scenario for relationships. And so often, if you're the lady and this is a situation, communicate that it's a little bit difficult that you're the only person financially contributing if that's not what you want. Some people don't care, but whatever that situation is. And also mention like you want to help, and if he's comfortable with you helping, then you're available, but don't start doing it without his permission. That's really going to make a lot of issues in the relationship. Social withdrawal or embarrassment is really common. You might not want to tell people what's going on. I had one patient that admitted this to me. I've had plenty of patients that say something similar, and so I'm not going to give the exact scenario, obviously confidentiality, but some patients are like, yeah, I don't want to tell my wife I lost my job, so I pretend I'm going to work, and actually I'm sitting at some place applying for jobs like the whole entire work shift. I get ready as if I'm going to work, but I'm actually not going to work. I'm going and sitting and just applying for jobs at the library. Or they might tell like, let's say they're not in a relationship where they're living with somebody, but they have a girlfriend. They don't want to say that they're homeless now and living in their car. So he's not saying anything. He's, going to the gym, taking a shower, whatever it is. And sometimes people have this in their history, in their life, and they never told their wife or the girlfriend. And then it comes out during couple sessions that this happened like in the beginning parts of their relationship. And now she feels like he should have told her because she could have helped. And like, there's so many things. And so a lot of men do these behaviors. The next one is loss of daily structure and interactions. That can happen too. You're not talking to your coworker anymore. You're not going to lunch with that other coworker. You're not even, some people don't, the only socialization is work. And so you don't have that anymore. And I'm not blaming people for this unemployment, because this is not just for men. This is for women too, so I hope this video is helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.